Thank you, Cory. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. We are located on the land of the Eastern Cherokee and Southern Iroquois. It is good to be here with you. I'm Kathy Crain. I'm a member of UUFC's Worship Associate team. Whoever you are, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whomever you love, wherever you were born, whatever language you speak, you are welcome here. We are so glad that you chose our fellowship as your place of worship this morning. If you're joining us for the first time this morning, welcome. If you are a visitor and would like to stand and tell us who you are, now is a good time to do that. Are there visitors who would like to announce themselves to us?
I feel like if it's the first time, they really don't want to talk. That's fair. Yeah.
It depends. We've got lots of different people that come in for the first time.
Hi, I'm Claire.
Hi.
Never done. Oh, I don't know this. Oh, we're making it even worse.
Okay. Hi. Okay. I'm Claire. I've gone to church my whole life, and every single one is kind of bigoted around here. And so I looked up what place of service is loving towards LGBTQ, because if they're willing to love something that a lot of the country hates, then they're probably not a loving community. So I showed up today.
You're in the right place, Claire. We're glad you're here. After the service, we gather for coffee and social connection in the social room at the end of the hallway to the left. Everybody, please join us. If you're interested in getting our weekly newsletter so you can get connected to our community, our weekly sharing of joys and concerns, and our collective efforts to support local social justice work, please reach out to the office by email on our website. So those of you who are familiar, you notice the back? It looks a little different. Typically, we have lots of announcements here, like this one. Have you ever thought about leading a service? Have a topic close to your heart that you would like to share? Do you have an interest in joining the Worship Associate team? If so, please reach out to Reverend Holly. The Shared Ministry team, which consists of Julia Bramajan, Joe Galliard, and Cindy Lee, is tasked with assessing the ministries of the fellowship. Some of the ways they do this are through a presence in the social hall after the service, emails to sharedministry@uufc.org, and by this QR code on the back of your order of service. Thank you for completing this. And circle dinners start in September. Register by August 10th. Circle dinners are a wonderful way to get to know members and friends of our fellowship. Jackie has the sign-up sheet by the opportunity table in the social hall. So for the rest of the announcements, you can hover over this QR code, the second one, and it'll take you to the weekly connection. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Holly Brown. My pronouns are they, them, and I am the minister here at UUFC. I'm so glad to see so many of you on this rainy day. I was a little worried with the weather whether we would have folks, and so I'm so glad you're here. This morning, for our opening words, I have a quote from Adrienne Marie Brown. Science fiction is simply a way to predict the future together. I suspect that is what many of you are up to, practicing futures together, practicing justice together, living into new stories. It is our right and responsibility to create a new world. What we pay attention to grows. So I'm thinking about how we grow what we are all imagining and creating into something large enough and solid enough that it becomes a tipping point. And in the spirit of imagination and being in community together, I invite you to rise in body, mind, or spirit wherever you are to join in singing number 318, We Would Be One. You can find it in the gray hymnal or on the screens.
Meg MacArthur has been an RE teacher with our children forever. She is representing the children of our fellowship as she comes to light our chalice. Thank you, Meg.
Let's hope I can do it.
So let's share in the reading of this fellowship's affirmation that is shared in the order of service. We gather together in a spirit of love with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another. Karen.
Well, in keeping with our sci-fi theme this morning, I have a fun little story to share with you. It's called Out There by Tom Sullivan. Have you ever looked planets deep into outer space? And have you ever wondered if there is anyone else out there? You mean like aliens? Yeah, there could be creepy extraterrestrials with big heads watching us. What about evil robots with tentacle arms? Or maybe there are cool aliens with blasters and planets with futuristic cities. What if instead of all that, though, there is a world out there somewhere that is just like ours? It could be filled with the strangest creatures, and cute ones too. There might even be intelligent life, just like us, only different. Maybe they're obsessed with technology like we are, or maybe they're not. There might be places where they've ruined their planet, and places where they've kept it clean. Places where they're kind, and places where they're mean. There could be places just like here, with families just like ours. Other people out there on a planet who call the universe their home. I mean, if space is as big as they say it is, we can't be the only ones who live here, right? Wait a second. You don't actually believe in aliens, do you?
This is the time we set aside for the offering in order to give toward the financial vitality of the community. Also, 25% of the undesignated collection each week goes to an organization in the local community with whom we partner. For the month of May, we are partnering with Clemson Child Development Center. And each week, we also collect non-perishable food for the Clemson Community Cares Food Bank. You may also give by going to the UUFC website and using the donate button, and there you will see options for paying for your pledge and donating toward the organizations with whom we partner. Thank you for your generosity.
Thank you all for your generosity, and I invite you into a time of generosity of spirit and care for one another as we share our joys and concerns each week. I invite you to hold them in your heart for a moment, and I've asked Kathy Crain, as the worship associate, if she would place a stone into this bowl representing our shared community. Have a joy from Alan Goldsmith. Thanks to Ellen Few for alerting me to thrift store clothing items she found and thought I might like. Even though I decided not to buy it, I took a photo of which I only discovered this week. Won a Merit Cash Award at the Anderson Art Center 50th Annual Juilliard Art Exhibit that closed last Friday. Congratulations. Have a joy that is a juxtaposition, I think, between concerns of the past and carrying it forward from Kathy Crain. That today it is the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. We learned in the news that the Minneapolis intersection of his death will continue to display its murals and posters of recognition. Have a joy from Steve's friends. That Steve Avragola and his cats continue to settle in the Morningside in Anderson. Visits and cards are welcome. And a joy from Marty and Petra. that we will visit Dell and Andy at the Harrisburg, Virginia UU next Sunday. I always love visiting other UU congregations, especially when they're friends to visit with. Teresa Lanford shared a concern that my heart is heavy for the people of Gaza whose future generations and cultures are being systemically destroyed. Have a joy from Paula and Jorge that they celebrate their choice of Everlawn Retirement Community. And they have a concern because they are seeking someone to adopt 1 or 2 cats because they are now in a much smaller space. And Sarah Summers Hoskin shares a concern and a joy. Concern is for Jess, John's sister, who is still hospitalized, and John and his sister, and is it UULZ? Or Jules, okay, sorry, are in Pennsylvania this week to be with her. They face many challenges as they make decisions and work toward healing. I'm doing intake on the first baby bats of the season. The incubator is full. Yes. And I have a joy from Martha Alexander that Jim hosted a fantastic birthday party for Martha's 86th birthday that was on May 21st in Bogey Grill at Cross Creek. Attending were sons Doug and Andy, daughter-in-law Denise, Denise's mother Marie, and grandson Patrick and his friend Savannah. Following dinner, the big surprise of the evening was the chocolate cake with flaming candles on the numerals 86. The employees and the people of the restaurant joined our family in singing happy birthday. Okay. Yes. And I also want to acknowledge what this weekend represents. Tomorrow is Memorial Day, and while it has become a weekend celebration holiday that kind of kicks off summer, it is supposed to be a remembrance that is a little bit more somber. A day to remember those who have died in service of our country, both recently and in the distant past. Let us remember those losses and those families that are left behind that carry their love forward. And we place one final stone for all of those joys and concerns that remain quiet and tender upon our hearts this morning. Now we have our religious education teachers that are going to go with any of our children that are present, and I invite you to sing Go Now in Peace. I invite you into a spirit of prayer and meditation, settling into your seats, finding a comfortable position, perhaps closing your eyes. We bow our heads in order to imagine not one path, but many. We imagine a path forward for those who cannot imagine any path forward because of poor health, financial hardship, family crisis, and other roadblocks we cannot begin to understand or imagine. We struggle to imagine a path for those who are forced to leave homeland against their will and for those unable to leave, war-torn homeland despite being in danger. We imagine a path forward for those who leave their homes to make a better life for their families elsewhere. May we be a welcoming presence along that path towards hope. We come together to imagine a path forward for those of us despairing because we do not seem to know our country nor our neighbors, despite the fact that we have not moved at all. May we be the good we are hoping to find as we travel side by side down the path towards hope. We imagine a path forward for those who feel lonely. May we take one another's hands as we walk that path toward community. Truly, we know as we might imagine these ways forward and take one another's hand, the path will lead to hope, the road will lead to beloved community, and the arc will bend toward justice because we have dared to travel with love in our hearts. I invite you to join together in a time of musical reflection and meditation.
A little bit about me. I learned about Unitarian Universalism when I lived in Austin, Texas, and went to a friend's wedding at the UU to read that's written in your order of service. And in contemporary time. The hero was Dana. She was a young black woman trying to become a writer. From the 1970s to the early 19th century, in order to save the life of her white ancestor named Rufus. Rufus was the son of a plantation owner and a slave trader. During these times of being pulled back, Dana's white husband was also pulled back through the time travel with her. So time travel in Kindred was a little bit more than a device and is the only science fiction or fantasy element in that novel. The book does not explain how or why time travel happens, but what did matter is that time travel did happen. It made the novel about slavery first and foremost. Kindred is about suffering, dehumanizing people as commodity. It's about lies, deception, self-deception. It's about the utter monstrousness of human nature. Octavia Butler's style was simple and clear while conveying incredible depths of meaning and character, especially where the dark, bordering on perverse relationship between Dana and Rufus, her white ancestor, was concerned. The importance of kindred has never waned. Sadly, terrifyingly, it now seems to be waxing. I was glad to have read this book, and through the loan of this novel, my then minister helped me to be involved with time travel for the purpose of getting a message across regarding views on slavery and racial inequity within our country over the course of history. It was great to experience historical fiction through science fiction. Thank you.
And we have a video on a different take of the song Pure Imagination, who some of you might know from Willy Wonka or the newer movie Wonka.
In a world of pure imagination, take a look and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation. If you want a view of paradise, no life I know to compare with pure imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly. If you wanna view paradise, simply close your eyes and see what. Wanna be a dreamer, be one. Wanna change the world. There's work to be done. There is work to be done.
Today I want to talk about imagination, if you hadn't picked up on that yet. Imagination calls us into all different kinds and ways of being in the world, exploring in a way beyond what is physically right in front of us, what we're going through in our day-to-day lives. I want to start with a quote from Reverend Walter Clark. He says, imagination, got tongue-tied. All right, try that again. Or in Willy Wonka, stop, reverse that, which was not planned. Okay. Imagination is how we adapt to the world that no longer allows us to thrive. It is finding ways to change your reality, to let go of how we have always done things and to focus on why we do them. That's the crux of imagination. Why? When our heart is centered on why, it leads to a sense of wonder. You start to see endless possibilities in everything. Wonder, in the right hands, leads to creation steeped in why, making a better world for all its inhabitants. Have any of you ever had the habit of asking why? Maybe that's why you found your way to Unitarian Universalism, because you like to ask why. Now, if you talk to my parents, they would say my third word that I spoke was why. And I like to say I've never stopped asking, much to the disappointment of my United Methodist minister father when I started picking apart all of the things that I didn't think made sense in Christianity, at least in the way it was often interpreted. And I think that led me to Unitarian Universalism eventually, although it took quite a number of years before I found out it even existed. I want to think about imagination beyond that why. How do we explore? And during these times especially, I have been struggling with all of the realities of the world around me. And so I have dived deeply into sci-fi and fantasy because it is a form of escape, while also still paying attention to the realities of the world, whether I like them or not. But our sci-fi and other forms of media, whatever form they take, also have the power to help us think about things a little bit differently, about representation in media. Now, sci-fi, like science and so many things, has been often lacking in diversity early on especially, and still some today, because of those that predominantly write, whether it is in book form. Because if you don't have diversity involved, the likelihood of it being represented isn't super high. But despite this, there have been opportunities to see more women, more Black and Indigenous individuals and people of color, LGBTQIA individuals, and those who have disabilities. They're often underrepresented in these imagined worlds. So often, women have been put as sex symbols or in need of saving in the damsel in distress trope. LGBTQIA individuals have been portrayed as villains or falling into the bury your gays trope. And both of these stem from the haze codes that existed in early Hollywood that limited what could be shown and how in television and movies. Disabled folks are often reduced to their disability, made to create a feeling of pity for them, or are shown in the version that is exceedingly putting pressure on them to recover and to be whole rather than living in the ways that they are experiencing. But when more individuals are involved in creating different types of media, that representation becomes more evident, some more distantly past and some more recent. For instance, Star Wars has two characters that develop from their stereotype into something more, with Princess Leia portrayed at the beginning and in some cases throughout the series as the damsel in distress in need of rescue. But you see her also become a general leading the resistance. And then you have Black man Lando Calrissian, played by Billy D. Williams, who also rose from being portrayed as a gambler, playboy, and con artist into also a general of the resistance. They both had the opportunity to evolve from stereotypes that might have been placed on them into multi-dimensional characters. And who here remembers, and not all of us are old enough for this, I'm going to preface that, sorry. But who here remembers either seeing it in real time or hearing about it later, the first interracial kiss on Star Trek in 1968 between Lieutenant Uhura and Captain Kirk? Now, the show also portrayed women in form-fitting clothing and often as sexual objects, but there's a juxtaposition in how they also, while doing one thing, made progress in another way. Now, a more recent show, although I realized that this was over 20 years ago now, I didn't like that realization. But in the show, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, one of the primary characters, Willow, comes out as a lesbian and has on-screen kisses with her girlfriend. And there's one part that I kind of have a problem with because it didn't really deal with the fact that she seemed to be more bisexual than lesbian, but TV doesn't always get it perfect. And they did fall into the bury your gays trope with her girlfriend dying tragically. Now, for me, a more pivotal one, y'all might know, some of you have heard me say it more than once, I like Doctor Who. You didn't know, did you? And in my early experience of watching Doctor Who when it had the kind of restart in the early 2000s, there was a character, Captain Jack Harkness, who was portrayed as the first time I saw a really truly out, open, clearly bisexual or pansexual identified individual. And he's shown to kiss the doctor and Rose, the doctor's companion at the time. And they didn't take it much further than that, but there was a spin-off show called Torchwood, in which there was exploration of bisexual characters, not just with Captain Jack, but a lot of the other characters on the show. And so it was a chance for me to see something about my own identity being represented in media, and it not being just stereotypes. And I had a friend in high school who has since written sci-fi fantasy books. And in her books that are, dealing with fae or fairy creatures and spirits quite often, there is a main character that she represents as asexual, the hero of the story. And often asexuality is not presented positively in media, and it is her identity. So it was an opportunity for her to place a positive character in the world. Deeper representation in those areas. Now, I watched a television show that was on, I want to say Disney Plus, called Echo. And this television show has 3 identities being represented as a superhero. She is indigenous, she's disabled, having a prosthetic leg, and she's deaf. And she is the hero of this story. She is kicking butt and is in a way that is often not portrayed with any combination of those identities. And that was put out by Marvel, which is kind of amazing. But they have evolved too. And I want to go back to Octavia Butler for a moment. As Kathy mentioned, kindred with a time travel element, she also wrote a book called Parable of the Sower. Any of y'all familiar with that one? Yeah. It's a little eerie in this day and age because it covered 2024 to 2027, written by kind of like a journal by a young Black woman living in an area near LA in Southern California. She wrote of them experiencing a 7-year drought and then suddenly getting torrential rains that they put out barrels to try to collect the water because access to water was so limited. They were in a locked neighborhood to stay safe with their community as much as they could. Imagination came up with that storyline, and thankfully we're not there exactly, but there are some things in it that feel a little too close to where we are in this age. And she wrote that in 1993. And I have another quote by Adrienne Marie Brown, and she notes that, as Octavia taught us, the only lasting truth is change. We will face social and political storms we could not even imagine. The question becomes not just how do we survive them, but how do we prepare so when we do suddenly find ourselves in the midst of an unexpected onslaught, we can capture the potential, the possibilities inherent in the chaos and ride it like dawn skimming the horizon. End quote. Now, the use of imagination to break down barriers isn't just in the realm of sci-fi. Who here watched the Mary Tyler Moore Show either when it was on originally or in reruns? I know I watched it some during reruns, and the thing about this particular show is that it shows a woman that is single, that is working in a male-dominated field in the 1970s, which seems like it shouldn't be that radical, but it was, and given the current times we are living in, I want to name something that is too real and that I didn't have written down here, but there's a television show based on a book about The Handmaid's Tale. And in the television show, I've watched a clip. I haven't watched all of it. To me, honestly, it feels a little too real. And that's my point. One of the clips that I have seen is a woman in a coma being kept alive to serve as an incubator for a baby in a world where less children are being born. And all too real is a woman laying in the hospital in Atlanta, being kept on life support even though she is brain dead and against the wishes of her family because of the abortion laws in Georgia. Sometimes sci-fi hits too close to home. Is Mr. Rogers. Some of you may know that Mr. Rogers television program for kids the world, to be able to talk to children in a way that helped them process their emotions, to deal with difficult topics. And he also did some things that were pretty radical at the time, pushing back on the norms that were expected. There is an episode in 1969 and then repeated in the 1990s with Officer Clemens being invited to place his feet to cool off in one of those little plastic kiddie pools. And this was at a time when Black and white individuals were not permitted to share the same pools. He did something radical in such a simple way that reached families and children all across the nation in a way that shouting it and saying this is wrong wouldn't necessarily achieve. If you had asked me 10 years ago, when I started seminary, or 6 years ago, or 10 years ago when I started the process to go to seminary, or 10 years ago when I 6 years ago when I graduated seminary, this day, 6 years ago, if you had asked me what I envisioned the world would look like, what my ministry would look like, I would not have imagined this. I could not have fathomed the idea of a global pandemic in the midst of my internship. I couldn't imagine so few years after marriage equality being passed that Roe v. Wade would be overturned. I couldn't imagine the threat to rights on all levels that is happening now. But I want to invite us to imagine a world that is better. We have successfully fought for rights in the past, and we will again. We can get through this. And the both and of that is the reality that not all of us will make it through. There are already people that are being impacted with being deported to areas that have more violence against them, people that are trans or non-binary that are having critical care stripped from them, financial support through Medicaid and Medicare that are being impacted. And this is why it's so important for us to consider the ways in which our imagination can keep our hope and our joy alive. Because if we don't have hope and we don't have joy, we are not going to make it. We have to support one another. We have to form communities of care. And we do some of that already by supporting Clemson Community Cares and the other organizations that help people in our communities, adding solar panels to the roof, which was not mentioned in the joys and concerns, by the way, but the initial goal for the solar project has been reached as of last Sunday. So not only are we going to put solar panels on the roof, we are going to be a resiliency hub, a place that if the power goes out, we have backup batteries and can invite people in our communities to be able to charge their devices, to have a place to heat up a meal, whatever that looks like. And we're going to need to have some help in figuring out how we implement that. So get your thinking caps on, work that imagination, and help us come up with some ways to implement that. As Unitarian Universalist, I think we have an important message about faith that is grounded in a liberating love, not a frivolous, romantic-only kind of love, but a liberating love that is at the center of what we do, that we strive to be more just, more equitable, that we work to transform the world through our imagination, that we invite a pluralism of a variety of different beliefs to come together, recognizing that we are connected, that there is an interdependence, and that we are generous with our resources to be able to support the ministries of this congregation, one another, and our communities. We envision a world beyond where we are now. We are striving toward beloved community. And as I come to a close, I want to share one more quote by Walter Brueggemann. He says, quote, "The task of prophetic ministry is to nurture, nourish, and evoke a consciousness and perception alternative to the consciousness and perception of the dominant culture around us. Our culture is competent to implement almost anything and to imagine almost nothing, because imagination is a danger. Thus, every totalitarian regime is frightened of the artist. It is the vocation of the prophet to keep alive the ministry of imagination, to keep on conjuring and proposing future alternatives to the single one the king wants us to urge as the only thinkable one." End quote. We may recognize that there are many ways to activate our imagination and influence change in the world, whether it is through media or our prophetic ministry of imagination. Imagining a world where our values are lived out loud in active ways that we show up and support one another. I want us to think about also, if we know something doesn't support our values, that if we can, we divest from those things. We don't vote for those officials. That we find a way to offer accountability. I saw in the news recently that Target's first quarter sales have been impacted dramatically from people boycotting Target when they rolled back their DEI practices. It can make people feel it in their pocketbooks. I want to invite us to keep the ministry of imagination alive so that we may see alternatives to the realities that we currently find ourselves in. The power to disrupt the regime currently in power through imagination of something better. May we find meaning and hope and joy in imagination in its many, many forms. May it be so, may we make it so, and blessed be. I'd like to invite you to rise in body, mind, or spirit, wherever you are, to join in singing number 1017, Building a New Way, which is in your teal hymnal or will be on the screens. thank y'all. I need to update our slides to have spaces in them, because if we don't have them, you don't know that something stretches out. And if you're looking in the hymnal, you might see that a little bit more, but I love having slides, but sometimes I think it hurts us with certain songs where those are longer rests or pauses. Because I know we could do that one better. But I think we did pretty good once we got past the first verse. We kind of got the hang of it. So I want us to think about ways that we can build a new way through new slides and through our imagination for a better world. As we go forth today, go in peace and return in love, touching the world around you with that as you go.
Thank you, Cory. Hi, Susan.